Good morning, Deputy Mayor McKelvey, City Councillors, and members of the public joining us today. My name is James Nolan. I'm the Executive Director of the Environment and Climate Division, and I'm joined today by my colleague David Jollymore, the General Manager of Fleet Services. Today, I'm pleased to give an overview of progress made to advance Transform TO, Toronto's net zero strategy, adopted by Council in December 2021, and the steps the City is taking to steering our emissions to net zero by 2040. Also, we'll be introducing a new major policy to enhance carbon accountability with the introduction of a carbon budget. Earlier this month, the City proclaimed April as Earth Month. It is fitting for us to take this forward today to raise climate awareness in our community and reflect on the challenges and opportunities for mitigating greenhouse gas emissions as we transition to a very low carbon future. There are three key climate-related reports before IEC today for its consideration. The first, Transform TO 2022 annual report, laying the foundation for net zero, provides an update on progress made in 2022 towards achieving the city's greenhouse gas reduction targets. The second, Carbon Accountability, Institutionalizing Governance, a Carbon Budget, and Offsets Credit Policy, proposes a new framework to link the city's financial budget with activities that contribute to GHG reductions, and including an updated corporate offset credit policy aligned with net zero science. The third is the Sustainable City of Toronto Fleets 2023 update, which provides an update for transitioning city fleets to sustainable, climate-resilient net zero operations. Before we get into the details of the reports, I'd like to provide a very quick refresher on the key focus of Transform TO. Transform TO outlines the city's role in ensuring the ways we build, travel, and consume result in fewer emissions and enable us to reach our GHG reduction targets. To reach these targets, the city will use its influence to regulate, advocate, engage, and facilitate transformation in 5 key areas. Demonstrating carbon accountability locally and globally by establishing a carbon budget for its own operations and the community as a whole. Accelerating a rapid and significant reduction in natural gas use. Establishing performance targets for existing buildings across Toronto. Increasing access to low-carbon transportation options, including walking, biking, public transit, and electric vehicles, and increasing local renewable energy to contribute to a resilient, carbon-free grid. Toronto's community-wide greenhouse gas emissions have been reduced by 43% against 1990 levels, surpassing our 2020 target. Though it should be noted that the reduction in emissions were affected by reduced travel during the COVID-19 pandemic emergency. Our immediate challenge is to take actions that cut community-wide emissions in half in the next 7 years by 2030. The city cannot achieve net zero alone. All of the community effort is needed, including enhanced coordination and dedicated funding contributions from all levels of government. For an example of what is needed to achieve net zero in Toronto, our technical modeling released with Transform TO estimated that the total investment required by the entire community, that is the city corporate, the business community, other levels of government, and individual residents, is in the order of $145 billion. To meet net zero by 2040, that would mean annual investments between $8 to $9 billion per year over the next 17 years, with most investments needed in the near term. For example, this would include costs to retrofit the estimated 450,000 residential homes and buildings, and about 27,000 home retrofits each year until 2040, and the purchase of 33,000 electric vehicles for 2030. These investments will also need to be supported by a clean and carbon-free provincial electricity grid. This scale of action needs everyone to get involved: residents, businesses, homeowners, building owners, and all levels of government. Now to the reports. The 2022 annual report outlines the city's progress in implementing the Transform TO strategy short-term implementation plan and provides an update on the 5 critical steps. 2022 is an important foundational year as we establish key actions to enable implementation of the goals and targets adopted in 2021 and continuing to advance actions that directly reduce emissions by the city, our partners, and our residents. I'm pleased to report that all 30 actions in the city's short-term implementation plan are underway, with some already completed. And through these 30 actions and the continued delivery of programs, policies, and investments, the City of Toronto continues to lead and support widespread climate action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions now and into the future. Additionally, nearly all of the 40 City Council directives are underway, with some completed. It is important to note that some outstanding directions are to be addressed in the future, like the direction related to the next iterations of the short-term implementation plan, and will be developed in the years to come. The attachments to the staff report provide additional detail on progress, but I did want to take a moment to highlight a few key achievements in 2022. First, the establishment of a climate advisory group comprised of 26 members of the public with diverse backgrounds and lived experience to help guide implementation of our Transform TO strategy with an equity lens. Version 4 of the Toronto Green Standard came into effect, which raised the bar once again for high-performance, high-quality, low-emission new buildings in Toronto. It will continue to raise the bar on building performance, as is expected to save more than 1 megaton of GHG emissions by 2050. Installation of more than 100 EV charging stations in Green P lots this year, with work underway to expand installations to more than 650 charging ports, both on-street and in Green P parking lots by the end of 2024. Establishment of a wastewater energy program and facilitation of one of the largest and first of its kind sewer heat recovery projects in the world that will expand local renewable energy supply for buildings. This project highlights how municipal assets like our wastewater infrastructure can bring clean energy solutions delivered by the private sector for the benefit of the broader community. And federal funding launched an enhanced home energy loan program to help homeowners improve the energy efficiency of their homes, replace their furnaces with electric heat pumps, install EV chargers, and more, seeing a 500% increase in loan applications. An EV charging plan is in the development, which will further grow this network, the network that I spoke about earlier, and support the transition to electric vehicles. Work continues to expand the cycling and transit networks, and the city launched the Solar TO web portal and solar map to enable home and building owners to assess the solar potential of their buildings. The second report before committee today is the Carbon Accountability Report. It addresses the first of the 5 critical steps I mentioned earlier. It introduces climate goals and governance chapter of the Toronto Municipal Code and codifies the foundation of the carbon accountability system. It outlines the process to establish multi-year emission budgets for Toronto's corporate and community-wide emissions. Requirements for planning, monitoring, and reporting written into the Municipal Code will enhance transparency and accountability in our climate progress. And this will be supported by an annual carbon budget that links to city decision-making on policies, programs, and projects in the annual financial budget to their expected GHG reduction impact from now until net zero is achieved by 2040. It also establishes a science-based corporate policy on offset credits aligned with net zero governance best practices, which will continue Toronto's leadership in this rapidly developing space. This slide shows a schematic of how the carbon budget process will work, but from a general perspective, the annual carbon budget report will summarize the current and new and enhanced GHG reduction projects and programs included in each division, agency, or corporation's budget. And in total, these will comprise the city's carbon budget in a given year. Carbon budget reports will include information on GHG reductions, the budgetary impact to help council and residents better assess how we are progressing toward climate goals. After the annual carbon budget report is released, the various projects and programs that it summarizes will be put forward for adoption by City Council, part of each division's budget proposal. And will be a coordinated approach with the financial plan. With that, I'll hand it over to David.
Good morning, Deputy Mayor, committee members, and members of the public who are in attendance here at City Hall with us or watching online. My name is David Jollymore, and I am the General Manager of the Fleet Services Division at the City of Toronto. We are happy to be bringing our report, IE 3.5, the Sustainable City of Toronto Fleets Plan, including an update and status for 2023. This plan is guided by Toronto's vision of being a clean, green, and sustainable city that is investing in quality of life, socially, economically, culturally, and environmentally to make Toronto a desirable place to live, prosper, and visit. The report identifies clear and decisive actions to invest in and accelerate city fleet emission reduction efforts and achieve net zero by 2040. Sustainable and resilient city fleet will be a foundation for delivery of quality services and value over the long term, and will help build a better, more sustainable, more resilient, and equitable society. City vehicles are an essential component of the delivery of city programs and the provision of public services. City vehicles are also the second highest source of the city's corporate emissions at 40%, following buildings at 46%. The scope of the plan includes more than 10,000 vehicles and equipment managed and operated by the Fleet Services Division, Toronto Transit Commission, Toronto Paramedic Services, Toronto Fire Services, Toronto Police Services, Toronto Community Housing, Exhibition Place, Toronto Zoo, Toronto Parking Authority, and the Toronto Public Library. Next slide, please. Our report sets out specific goals for the city fleets in terms of emission reduction targets, vehicle and equipment transition targets, and net zero procurement. Two of the key contributing factors for enabling the achievement of set goals. First is industry readiness. The city's ability to procure zero-emission vehicles is largely dependent on the auto and heavy equipment industry's readiness to produce and supply viable zero-emission vehicle options and quantities, especially for the medium and heavy-duty vehicles. Second is funding. Various types of economic pressures continue to create a very challenging financial situation for the city. Without required funding, city fleets will be challenged to meet Transform TO goals and objectives. Next slide, please. City fleets transition to zero-emission vehicles will carry a significant upfront cost. However, the long-term environmental, economic, and social benefits are far more significant. By achieving net zero by 2040, we expect to eliminate 244 metric kilotons of GHG and an estimated $400 million of avoided cost of social and economic damage. Social cost of carbon is calculated based on the Environment and Climate Change Canada approach on the social cost of greenhouse gases, also used by the US federal government. From a corporate sustainability perspective, improved asset management and efficient use of city assets will result in reduced costs and better service delivery. The city also has the opportunity to demonstrate its leadership on sustainability to our employees, the broader community, businesses, and other municipalities and levels of government. By modeling how to electrify a corporate vehicle fleet, city fleets could also play an important role in market transition to zero-emission vehicles, including lowering barriers to the adoption of zero-emission vehicles. Thank you for your attention, and we are happy to take questions.